On the one hand, you have a familiar face with a ton of new capabilities. On the other, you've got some unique style covering a more simplistic outlook. Hey, it's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the Samsung Galaxy S4 versus the Sony Xperia Z. From a quick glance, you see that both of these phones are quite different. Samsung's new flagship phone is all too familiar with a similar rounded look and the same button layout as the Galaxy S3. It is, however, one of the best handling 5-inch phones with its smaller bezel, thin profile, and light handling. Sony's flagship might be larger, heavier, and it requires a bit more hand gymnastics, but it is definitely a looker. With a rectangular black slate look and angular corners, this is a look we don't see often enough. Its handling is helped by having its buttons all on the same side and halfway down the device. That big silver button is a great focal point that really pops. Flat sides benefit both devices, though the Z's sides are flat primarily because of the flaps that close all the ports for water resistance. Samsung's plastic material is starting to get old, but the all-glass finish of the Xperia Z gives it the same slickness in the hand. Either phone will require a good wipe down from time to time. So, the S4 will please those who look for familiarity, while the Xperia Z will likely turn more heads due to its throwback design. The displays on both devices have largely the same specs, as both offer 1080p resolution at 441 ppi. The TFT capacitive display found on the Xperia Z has been widely publicized for having poor viewing angles, though this isn't a big deal to everyone. Being backed by the Bravia engine makes dead-on viewing pretty amazing, as it makes the Xperia Z look like a small Sony TV. Its color production is a little more on the subtle side compared to the very saturated capabilities of the Galaxy S4. Samsung's Super AMOLED technology returns and makes colors from the S4 really jump out. Luckily, if you don't like this barrage on the eyes, you can change the screen's motif in the display settings. The Galaxy S4 does have much better viewing angles, but when it comes down to it, you'll likely choose the right phone for you based on more than just the displays. After all, either one will bring you a wonderful experience. When it comes to performance, it's a battle of past versus present. While the Sony Xperia Z definitely has great performance and is one of the most optimized users of the Snapdragon S4 Pro, it has to contend with the next Qualcomm evolution. Western versions of the Samsung Galaxy S4 will have the Snapdragon 600 that clocks in at 1.9 GHz, a real bump up from the 1.5 GHz S4 Pro found in the Xperia Z. While the Xperia Z was the first phone I tested to clear the 20,000 mark in Antutu easily, the S4 surpasses it. Adreno 320 graphics and 2GB of RAM back these processors up, so gaming and multitasking are great experiences either way. Both phones will give you great performance as the S4 Pro still holds up. So, really only the spec sticklers will truly notice the difference in speed the Galaxy S4 has over the Xperia Z. Here's where things get tricky. Aside from the usual bells and whistles, both phones offer different things in extra hardware. The Xperia Z might not have a removable back, but one of the flaps covers a micro SD card slot to bolster its 16 GB of usage. Its battery is not removable, but the Z does have one great thing going for it: water resistance. While it might not seem completely practical, it can be your phone's savior if something unfortunate happens. The Galaxy S4 is not water resistant, but that back plastic cover allows you to get to the battery and the micro SD card slot. The main additions in the Galaxy S4 involve sensors for enhanced navigation, like air gestures, and an IR blaster that can control your TV. Finally, it has a much better speaker. See our full Galaxy S4 review for the rest of the new bits and pieces. The new additions give the Galaxy S4 a lot to offer, though they're no good if they get wet and damaged, something the Xperia Z has no worry of. If that is important to you, the nifty water resistance might make Sony's phone the one for you. We already mentioned that the battery in the Xperia Z is not removable, which is a big deal to people who like to have a spare unit handy when needed. The longevity of the Xperia Z's 2330 mAh battery has proven mixed, with web and general browsing faring better than media consumption. There are, however, a lot of power-saving options to help you comfortably get through a day's work. The Galaxy S4, on the other hand, allows you to keep that spare available, but for most days it might not be necessary, as the 2600 mAh battery can last for quite a while. If you're not a power user, you might even get a couple days out of a single charge. While some frugality might be required in the Xperia Z, it should still get the job done. Otherwise, the power paranoid can take advantage of the larger unit in the S4, maybe with a spare handy, just in case. And now for the cameras. Both phones sport 13 megapixel shooters, with the Xperia Z packing an Exmor RS sensor. Sony's Cybershot pedigree shows with the inclusion of superior auto that automatically sets the appropriate mode for the scene. Added features include HDR and sweeping panorama. Picture quality is quite good, with accurate reproduction despite colors tending toward a cooler motif. Much like the displays, pictures aren't as saturated as those the S4 creates. Samsung's camera does produce very nice photos as well, and its color reproduction brings vibrancy to just about any photo. But the S4's additions come with the new modes in the app itself. Without listing all of them, certain modes like Drama Shot and the Dual Capture do add more potential fun to your smartphone photography. You can see our new features explained video for a better look at these new options. Those looking for more ways of getting a quirky Instagram photo might opt for the Galaxy S4. Either phone, however, will prove a very capable shooter. And finally, we have the software. We'll start with the Galaxy S4 as it has the more heavily modified user interface. TouchWiz is something you love or hate, but at least the S4 makes it more bearable with a larger screen that better suits its bloated elements. App additions include the remote controller Watch On and the helpful tracker S-Health, bolstering other well-known capabilities like S-Voice and multi-window. In navigation, you can now use your floating finger like an S Pen to get previews and wave your hand or use your eyes to scroll. Again, see our other two videos for a more in-depth look. These might all be more options than you can handle, but they are available for usage whenever you fancy. Compare all this to the Xperia Z, which takes a much simpler approach. It looks a lot more like stock Android, Ice Cream Sandwich in particular, and opts for darker tones over the uber colorful. Sony does have its classics in there like the Walkman, but also adds in small apps for further multitasking. If you dislike TouchWiz, the S4 probably won't help with that. In that case, the more simplistic and low-key Xperia UI might better suit you. However, the Galaxy S4 does take advantage of its new hardware features to bring you a navigation experience that feels fresh, despite not being particularly revolutionary. As premium phones, both of these top-tier devices will set you back a pretty penny. Unlocked, either smartphone will get close to $700 US, although the Xperia Z has been around a little longer and can possibly be found for cheaper prices. The Xperia Z isn't widely available on US carriers yet, but it will likely be at the typical $199 on 2-year plans, just like the Galaxy S4. And so, there you have it. Sony's best against Samsung's best. Samsung put a lot of effort into making the S4 a tough package to beat, and while it may be the easiest handling 5-inch screen device, it may also prove overwhelming to those looking for a simpler software experience. Enter the complete opposite, the Xperia Z. Despite being closer to stock Android in its user interface, the water-resistant design also brings a slightly bigger profile and much more unique looks. In the end, you're choosing between familiarity, with new capabilities, or a phone with a new look that is very good at everything you're already used to. Drop a like on this edition of Versus and then check out all our other coverage at the Android Authority YouTube channel. And then head over to androidauthority.com because we're your source for all things Android.